The Wilson's Airport, just south of Hickory, North Carolina, has been operational as a day-only neighborhood airport since the 1970s, and it's a safe airport, but here are some tips for you to help us keep it that way. First, just like with any flight, you need to make an honest and humble assessment of your capabilities as a pilot, the capabilities of your aircraft, and the conditions. Any one of these three can preclude safe operations. Personally, I've flown a very capable airplane from Wilson's for over 10 years, but still, there are conditions when I choose not to fly, and these are usually strong winds. If you only ever fly at big, wide open airports, validate your skills and calculations incrementally before you jump in and commit here. Measure your actual performance and allow some additional margin. Practice using just one half of the runway width, for example, or just the first 1,000 feet of length. Once you know that you and your airplane are ready, the next most important advice is to always take off downhill, which is southbound, runway 17, and always land uphill, northbound on 35. If you judge the current wind is too strong to allow for this, you should not operate here until the conditions improve. There are always options for ground transportation at Hickory and Lincolnton or Morganton, and even if they seem inconvenient, it's always less inconvenient than retrieving your airplane from the trees. The terrain at Wilson's is flat on the north end for about 600 feet of length. As you go south, it drops 65 feet total. The drop gets steeper as you proceed south. There have been pilots who have landed southbound and had a hard time stopping, especially if the grass is damp. If you're landing northbound, there's no need to land before the landing threshold, which is marked by three side-by-side yellow cones on each side of the runway. If the winds are strong across the runway, say more than about 10 knots, you can encounter strange rotors and flows across the trees near the runway. Landing patterns use left turns as required by 91-126B. We operate under an LOA with a second private use airport, which is located 1 mile to the south. To deconflict the two traffic patterns, E40 traffic remains north of the large power line when below 1,000 AGL, which is nominally 2,000 MSL. If you're landing, turn your base north of the power line. If you're departing, make your turn out before you reach the power line. If you don't feel comfortable with this, please reconsider your readiness to operate here. This is not a particularly difficult thing to accomplish. You can always comply by being above 1,000 feet AGL on the south side of the power line, which would be climbing a pretty steep climb gradient on your departure or flying a reasonably steep approach when landing. If you don't like your approach, make your go-around decision early. With a lower horsepower to weight ratio airplane like a Cessna 150 or Cherokee 140, you may not have sufficient performance to outclimb the terrain as you fly northbound. Finally, like most airports, Wilson's has nearby houses, so please be respectful to our neighbors. Use and enjoy the airport, but if you want to fly a few operations in a row, consider hopping down to Lincolnton or over to Laney's to give the neighbors a rest after the first few. Access to the property is controlled by an automatic gate, which has a sensor on the right side of the driveway to open the gate when exiting. If you have any problems, contact the manager owner listed in the chart supplements, which is what we used to call the AFD. Please leave comments to the video here if you have any additional tips to share with your fellow pilots.